What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the Equinox UI and we're going to talk about the values that Equinox brings. So we've talked about, here are some scenarios for wiring. You can use Vantage Stats centrally, you can use Vantage Stats in room, and you can use some of our Premier Partner drivers to get an Equinox experience. The question remains, what exactly is the Equinox experience? What can I get? So this slide is one you've seen before, where we talk about the sliding curve, if you will, of the value of different Equinox devices. And as we discussed in last month's webinar, to be successful, you really need to plan on a mix of interfaces because they're all basically aesthetically the same. That's easy to do, and users will find moving from one device to another relatively seamless. Also remember that Equinox is not meant to replace all the keypads in a project. It's intended to add capability where and when you need it throughout the project, okay? So let's start with the standard keypad, like EasyTouch 2, which is still the industry benchmark in form and quality for keypads. You see, and you guys know these keypads. They are really good at being simple interfaces. And for climate, they're often successfully used in scenes or macros like an area on or an area off that sets the set point forward or back, depending, right? You just include it in the room off or the room on. That's a really straightforward approach. Then you have the 4.0, the Equinox 4.0, which is, in our opinion, great for transitional areas, such as bedrooms, perhaps, and hallways. And that's thanks to the Climate Mini widget, which you can see, if you're looking at the slide, we've kind of taken an exploded view. So you can see that top section of the 4.0, where you can quickly control temperature, and then you have lights and audio still in the same keypad, which allows you to reduce the wall clutter all at the same time. So you've got this combination keypad. And one of the other great benefits of 4.0 is because it rides on the station bus, it can go into existing projects today. And it can be used, of course, in new design. Now, in contrast, you could jump all the way to a 7.3 or an app, which are great in suites, entrances, exits, because the 7.3s are always on, right? They have high functionality, and high functionality such as hold or scheduling capabilities that the 4.0 doesn't have. Hold would mean you're in a schedule, it's currently at 75 degrees, in its schedule, it's going to jump to 78 in a few hours perhaps. Well, hold allows you to temporarily override, if you're familiar with that, and say, well, I'm a little cool or I'm a little hot. You can do that from a 7.3 or from one of the apps. But maybe you don't need too many of the 7.3s, okay? We understand that. Now, so the question remains, what about the 4.1s? The 4.1s are an interesting keypad and a great opportunity for you guys. It's, as Andrew mentioned, and those of you who were on it last month, we talked in depth about 4.1's positioning in a project. So we'll reiterate some of that because in our opinion, with that single widget view and their reduced size compared to the 7.3 and the keypad form factor that they have, and because they're available at a very competitive price, we think the best use for 4.1s is in any mixed zone of climate, where you would need a thermostat typically, an audio where you would need an audio keypad typically, and lighting where you'd have a lighting keypad typically. Because it can handle full thermostat functions, right, with full graphical feedback like the 7.3, and it should really become your default thermostat and can double as a shade keypad, security interface, cameras, etc. So it's a really, really pivotal keypad moving forward for your projects. Now, coming away from this slide as you look at, going from a standard keypad up to 7.3, you should hopefully feel really comfortable in discussions with your customers on recommending solutions for climate control in their projects. As an example, Reed, if you can move to the next slide, to demonstrate this, here's a project in Los Angeles that chose and benefited from a centrally designed climate solution. It had 19 zones of thermostats, which is large compared to some, but not as big as many of the projects that we've done for sure. They used Vantage stats centrally located in a mechanical room, flush sensors out in the wall. In fact, if you can, if it's not too small, in the right-hand corner picture above the absolute keypad, you can see a remote temperature sensor in that zone, a flush mount sensor. Now, this project was actually installed with Infusion in the early days of Infusion with 650s. And this project removed those 650s and put in Equinox 7.3s with the retrofit kit. And also added a couple of apps to that project for both Android and Apple tablets. So now so what? I think what's interesting about this project, one, is that they upgraded and replaced the 650s with Equinox devices. And this is something you guys can do with your existing customers. And the other is that they took advantage and thought ahead and designed the system to be minimalistic, to remove as much wall clutter from the project as possible from inception. And this is possible in just about every single project, even retrofit projects, where you can repurpose the wiring. The thermostats are out with remote temperature sensors and put thermostats back in the mechanical room. This is an option that a lot of projects have. So really nice project that perhaps some of you have done similar.